Average hardcore gamer here. Throughout my gaming life, there has been one franchise staple that I've never touched, and that is Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy is one of those big names that you really can't ignore no matter how much you want to, even if you tried. It's just that massive. And despite me never playing a Final Fantasy game, I was always aware of its existence. And if you're watching this video, chances are you have always been aware of its existence since childhood too. 2024 is probably a very strange time to hop into Final Fantasy, let alone going straight into Rebirth instead of Final Fantasy VII Remake that released all the way back in 2020. Not to get too heavy into it, but Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was also marketed as an entryway into Final Fantasy VII. And before hopping into this game, I did manage to get an okay from some of my friends who do enjoy this franchise already. But playing this entry first makes me so excited to go back to play Final Fantasy VII Remake. But when it comes to Final Fantasy Rebirth, this game is drop-dead gorgeous, from its characters to its main environments, dialogue that seems natural and even heartwarming at times, and its many songs. This game's soundtrack is just phenomenal. I've put in around 80 hours so far into Rebirth, and I have to say its soundtrack is already one of my all-time favorites. Final Fantasy games are JRPG games, which means that they are almost painfully long, and they almost require your full attention gaming-wise. A lesson I learned when I played my first JRPG, Dragon Quest XI on the Switch. And also Astral Chain, though not in JRPG, but with a lot of JRPG elements. And I should say, if you've never played an RPG or JRPG, be prepared for information overload. But I promise as soon as you find your footing with the information, you will understand why these games are so special. Think of these games as Pokemon games for adults, no shade thrown. So with that being said, when picking up Rebirth, I already knew what I was getting into, so the duration of the game is not a shock to me, and I'm glad Rebirth is as long as it is because I genuinely love the adventure of Rebirth. I haven't completed the game yet, but the regions available to you are just very unique and as vast as the next one. You really do get a sense of what it's like to live in this world just by walking around and exploring what's available to you. I think I can understand arguably why it's the most popular out of all the Final Fantasy titles since the PS1 days, and how that translates to today's time. It's bigger, shinier, and better. But what really thrills me about it is the combat in Rebirth. Excluding the synergy abilities, which I believe are not in Final Fantasy VII Remake, I just love how the battles flow once you get the hang of it. The combat system alone takes a lot of time to get used to, but once you start to get a grasp of it, it's really smooth sailing. I personally took a whole day to myself just to read the manual in-game, just because how overwhelming it is. It really is just jam-packed with a lot of information that takes a little time to learn, but it's worth it when you do. The menu system is also the same. It does take some time exploring and figuring it out, so you really do need to spend a lot of time just reading a lot and making sure you understand what's available as well. And with saying that, the demo for Rebirth is what actually sold me on playing this as my first Final Fantasy game. Although the information was a lot to comprehend, I knew I was playing something special once the combat started. My only problem that I recognized right away is that I wasn't fully understanding it, and I knew it would just take time. Not to spend too much time on the combat, but when you add in all the other elements of this game, mixed in with its combat system, it's very hard to ignore just how well developed this game actually is. Not to mention all of the mini games available to you to play inside of this title. Honestly, it's probably a crime to charge this game for $70 because, man, this game, there's so much to do inside of it. It's like playing maybe 4 games in one. That's the content of the mini games that we're talking about here. And do not get me started on Queen's Blood. Queen's Blood is a card game specifically found in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that reminds me of Yu-Gi-Oh! Capsule Monsters back on the PS2 that was released in 2006. Outside of the main game itself are all of these other games to play, with Queen's Blood being arguably the most impressive. You could sell this game separately for online play, and it would still sell reasonably well within the Final Fantasy VII community. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is just phenomenal to me, and I don't think I can ever turn my back on this franchise for the rest of my life. And if you've never played a Final Fantasy game, this is such a great place to start. Yes, it is long, but Not only is it filled with a lot of things to do and see, but you can tell how much love was poured into the development of this title. And I can really see this winning Game of the Year, or at least many awards at this year's Game Awards. This is the Average Hardcore Gamer, and as usual, play well.